B11529. That's the name of the new variant of COVID-19 first detected in South Africa.
The genomic surveillance in South Africa has been outstanding throughout this whole pandemic period. And that's why we've been able to identify when changes occur. We must be careful that we don't then jump to the conclusion of, well, that equals it came from here, it came from there, and it means it's this or that.
Dozens of countries have shut down air travel from South Africa and neighbouring nations, including Namibia, Botswana, Zimbabwe and Mozambique.
We are deeply disappointed by the decision of several countries to prohibit travel from a number of Southern African countries, including our own, following the identification of the oMicron variant.
But what exactly is the global playbook on this? What are we planning to do? Are we just planning to act politically, knee-jerk reaction, so that we can satisfy those people within our countries, that we're keeping those, those unvaccinated Africans out?
The travel ban should be extended to other countries as well. Why is it only Africa? What I'm asking is why the other 24 countries have not been banned.
From Triple E Media, I'm Rahmat Muhammad, and this is The Backstory. Today on The Backstory, John, Anthonieta, and I take a closer look at the decision that some countries have made to selectively ban travel after the oMicron variant was identified in South Africa. John and Anthonieta, what's going on with this latest variant of the COVID-19 virus, and why are African leaders speaking up against the travel ban?
On Thursday, the 25th of November, that's about 2 weeks ago, the health authorities in South Africa released a statement.
B11529. That's the name of the new variant of COVID-19 first detected in South Africa.
At the same time, the country's health minister confirmed that the variant had also been detected in 2 other countries,
Botswana and Hong Kong. He also stated that the new variant might be the reason why more cases were being reported in South Africa.
Within 24 hours after South Africa released information about the new variant, other countries started to detect the variant as well. And as of a few days ago, the WHO was reporting that 38 countries had detected the Omicron variant. Only 5 of those countries are in Africa.
Now, within 48 hours after South Africa reported this new variant,
dozens of countries have shut down air travel from South Africa and neighbouring nations, including Namibia, Botswana, Zimbabwe and Mozambique.
The UK, the US, Israel, Saudi Arabia and other nations started to impose a travel ban.
Some countries like Israel, China, Japan and Morocco, they imposed complete bans on foreigners entering their borders for a limited time.
Other countries have instituted bans that specifically target 8 countries in Southern Africa.
But I thought only 5 countries in Africa detected the Omicron variant.
Exactly, and only 3 of them are in the Southern Africa. So it's not clear why all 8 Southern African countries are on a travel ban list.
But that's not the only issue. Remember we said that the Omicron variant had been detected in at least 38 countries.
Yes, and only 5 were in Africa at the time.
Right. None of the other 33 countries that have also detected Omicron are being selectively targeted for travel bans. Let's take the case of Germany as an example. The most recent data we have shows that in Germany, the number of cases has gone up 4 times between October and November, and the number of COVID-related deaths have more than doubled in that time frame.
The situation is so bad in Germany that they are using Air Force planes to transport patients from hospital to hospital. So it will make perfect sense if Germany decided to close down its borders to everyone to prevent the spread of this new variant.
Instead, Germany has only banned travel from the 8 southern African countries, even though all of the countries that surround Germany have confirmed the Omicron variant.
But there are still strict requirements to enter Germany from the surrounding countries, right?
Yes, there are. Like, those travelers still need to have negative COVID tests, and they still need to quarantine for 14 days. But they're not banned from entering if they meet those requirements.
So why doesn't Germany just impose the same requirements for the 8 Southern African countries?
Well, I think their thinking is that travelers from the 8 Southern African countries would risk increasing the numbers of cases of Omicron in Germany.
Okay, but the bordering countries have also detected Omicron. Couldn't those travelers also potentially bring in new cases?
Yes.
So why the selective ban on African countries?
The logic isn't completely clear to us at the moment, but we have 2 guesses. First, there's a high public and political pressure in Germany and across all of Europe to do something about the number of rising cases.
Now, in the warm months of July and August, much of Europe gave the impression the worst of the pandemic was over. Countries lifted their COVID-19 restrictions. People traveled for holidays again, gathered in large numbers, and you didn't need to wear masks in many places. But infections are now rising to record levels. The World Health Organization says the region is once again the center of the pandemic. It's urging governments.
Around June of this year, the cases in both North America and Europe started to rise almost exponentially. Now, by August, North America had managed to stop the rise and the number of cases there actually started to go down. But across the pond in Europe, the cases just kept going up and up.
And by the end of last month, Europe recorded almost 9 million cases. That's over 15% higher than they had in November of last year. And by the way, the numbers in Europe keep rising even though 54% of the population is fully vaccinated.
So it could be that they added the ban to try to buy time to vaccinate more people before having to deal with a new variant. And if we put ourselves in Europe's shoes, there are other practical and economic reasons why they may not be able to ban travel from bordering countries.
European countries engage in trade heavily with each other. For example, over 65% of Germany's trade is with other European countries. When it comes to land borders, the movement of those goods requires the movement of people as well. Closing the borders with neighboring countries would significantly impact the regional economy.
I mean, just look at what happened here in Nigeria. We have closed the borders with Niger Republic and parts of Benin a few times now, and look at our economy. So there could be economics involved in the travel ban decision as well. But I think it's primarily a political one. Europe and North America have been hit hard by COVID-19, and the people there are tired.
Some of the reactions have been angry. Demonstrations against coronavirus restrictions have drawn tens of thousands of protesters into the streets.
8 months into the pandemic, we understand that people are tired and yearn to get on with their lives.
I think if Africa had been hit hard, we would probably be banning travel as well.
That brings us to the next question. Why aren't African countries placing travel bans on Southern Africa or other countries that have detected Omicron?
Well, some are actually placing travel bans. Morocco in North Africa has placed complete travel bans on all countries for 2 weeks. Angola and Rwanda have banned travel from Southern Africa. But yes, the vast majority of African countries are not banning travel from Southern Africa. Instead, they are imposing tighter regulations for testing and quarantine, which is in line with what the WHO is recommending.
Part of the reason why African countries are not placing the bans is probably because COVID-19 has not really hit us hard from a medical perspective. If you remember, back in April of 2020, Melinda Gates predicted that if the world didn't take action against COVID, there would be dead bodies all over the streets of Africa. And thankfully, she was wrong. So we're not seeing the number of cases that Europe and North America are seeing, and we're also not seeing the number of deaths. But if we were, it's also possible that we will be banning countries left and right.
The other reason why African countries are not calling for a travel ban might also have to do with economics. Even though we haven't been hit in terms of cases and deaths, we have suffered major economic setbacks, and closing our borders will only set us back some more.
So the decision to ban travel from South Africa, to some of us here in Africa, that decision, it sounded like a knee-jerk reaction based on bias. And I've been seeing and reading so many us versus them type of comments that have come on the heels of the travel bans. The word apartheid is even being used now to describe the travel bans and the inequality in vaccine distribution.
And the decision to ban travel selectively to African countries was and is a knee-jerk reaction.
But it's more likely based on fear.
Thank you, Anthonieta. Thank you, John. Hey guys, so I've been following the commentary in Nigeria about the travel ban, and initially there was a lot of anger. As I mentioned earlier, I saw a lot of these us versus them type of comments. But as the reality of the ban is beginning to set in, a different kind of conversation is starting to emerge. And it's the elephant in the room that few of us here in Nigeria want to admit out loud. So instead of facing the issue head on, we'd rather just get loud and throw out unfortunate phrases like travel apartheid to distract from the real issue. And the real issue that I'm talking about here is the vaccination certification process. Is it possible, just possible, that at least in the case of Nigeria, part of the reason why we're being added to the no-fly list is because there's something off with either our vaccination process or our vaccination certification process, or both? Only 3% of Nigeria's population has received either full or partial COVID-19 vaccination. That's about 6 million people out of over 200 million. We're going to need a whole nother episode to go into all the reasons why that number is so low, but for now, we'll leave it at the simple fact that only 3% of our population here in Nigeria has been fully or partially vaccinated. And for most people who I've spoken with, the push for campaign vaccination is not really matching up with what they see with their own two eyes. They are not seeing dead bodies piling up on the streets of Africa, as Melinda Gates suggested would happen, for whatever reason. And Africans call it God's grace. COVID-19 has not had the same devastating impact here as it has had in the West. So perhaps for this reason and many other reasons, including a recent history of vaccine mismanagement that was associated with the Pfizer brand, people in Nigeria are wary of taking vaccines. Now, obviously, this creates a problem for our government and the overall global effort to manage the virus as it continues to evolve. But does the low vaccination rate justify banning travel? The answer to that depends on what your experience of COVID-19 has been like. In Africa, our experience from a public health perspective has not been as devastating as it has been in other places. So for us, a ban on travel doesn't make sense. But what if the shoe were on the other foot? What if Melinda Gates was right? Would we hesitate before activating a travel ban? The number of deaths in Europe are rising again. And given our low vaccination rates, why would they risk increasing those numbers even more? Now, there is a bigger issue that needs to be raised, which is why are the vaccination rates in Africa low in the first place? That's next time on The Backstory. The Backstory is brought to you by E Media Productions. Production copyright 2021, E Media Productions. This episode of The Backstory was produced by Rahmat Muhammad, Anthonieta Kalunta, John Iwodi, Uche Mba, Dominic Tabakaji, and Sam Tabakaji. Executive producer Rahmat Muhammad. Special thanks to Usamah Lucky and Malawi Gbado Ikaleku. If you enjoyed this episode and you want to hear more, subscribe to our YouTube channel at 234 Audio and turn on that notification bell. You can also listen to The Backstory on our website at 234audio.com, on Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Spotify, TuneIn Radio, or wherever you get your podcasts. If you're interested in sponsoring or licensing this program, or if you just want to say hello, reach out to us on WhatsApp at 0818-230-1234. We'd love to hear from you. I'm Rahmat Muhammad. See you next week.